Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the C-Files. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Well, let's get right into the program. I have a lot for us tonight, a lot to catch up on after a successful surgery and in the process of recovery, but I'm up and about and I am going to begin to hit it hard. We begin with Alex Jones on X. Exclusive. The globalists are not done trying to destroy President Trump, warns General Flynn. It says, make no mistake, we are winning, but beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. Now, folks, this might sound like it's a little bit in the background because I have my laptop here and I'm going to play a portion of this. Now, it's 26 minutes long. That is too long, but I want to get a gist of what General Flynn has to say. And then I will do some commentary, and then we'll move on to other things that are important.
I want people to remember that the globalists, they are not done trying to achieve their objective, okay? Again, 2016, Trump got in the way in a big way, and everybody figured out he was done after 2020, and he came back, right? I think you just showed it, the back to back to back. I love it. So we won, and we won this past week. We're winning. I want people to understand that we are winning. We got them on their heels. They don't know quite how to act, so they're a little bit frantic. They get their minions like the Mike Pences out there. There's also going to be other, there's going to be other sort of sheep in wolf's clothing that are on the Republican side, and the Democrats. We know their game plan is the globalist game plan. That you're going to have the sort of the Republican establishment. Got to be very careful about the smiling. Right, the smiling assassins, right? So we're in phases. The phase that we're in right now is the transition phase. I can tell you, as a matter of fact, transition on the battlefield, on the physical battlefield, is the most difficult operation to conduct. So politically, we are in a very difficult transition with an adversarial, government bureaucracy. Fourth estate, you can call it, whatever you want to call it, but it is a body of people that do not see eye to eye with this president-elect's agenda, and they are going to try to thwart it at all costs. Now, the next thing is the people that Trump is choosing, and Trump is clearly not just choosing for now, but it's the way you kind of talk about how you do the news, Alex, on your network. You always talk about what's going to happen. So one of the things that I believe that Trump is projecting in these picks is a youthfulness to a degree that also projects us into the future. So he is preparing a battlefield, not just for now to take this globalist cabal on and reshape and correct our government and get our country back on the rails, but he's also starting to really go into the youth movement of our talent. And I do think that we're going to see people that have never served in government that are going to be serving in government. And I'm all for that. We need fresh ideas, fresh faces, and fresh innovative solutions for the kinds of things that we have.
Yeah, we need people who are not controlled and bought off by big industry, haven't become a part of the government establishment so that they can be manipulated and controlled by the government bureaucrats who are unelected, and they outlive multiple presidents, and they're hired to do a job. And if they would just do the job that they were hired to do, it would be a different matter. If they were honest, if it was honest government doing an honest job for the American people, the American people would have a different perspective on what's going on in our federal government. But because it's not honest, because they have corrupted themselves, we no longer have a trust in those bureaucratic agencies. And this election basically told them three things. Number one, stop being corrupt. We're tired of you being corrupt, and we're not going to put up with your corruptness anymore. The rules have changed, as my Trump hat says. I have it downstairs. The rules have changed. and you're no longer in charge. You no longer tell us how it's going to be. We now tell you how it's going to be. And this is the panic that's in Washington. Is the fact that they are now going to be made accountable to the American people, which they hate. They don't want that. They don't want to be accountable to us. They want to be autonomous and be our boss and boss us around and tell us how it's going to be. And this is the problem: is that pride has entered in, arrogance has entered in, and they worship their degrees and their highfalutin education and their highfalutin universities. And it's gone to their head, and they've lost any sense of wisdom. They have become educated fools, ever learning and never coming to the truth, the scripture says. And so now God has intervened, and they are finding themselves in the situation they're in. And a lot of these bureaucrats are going to lose their jobs. Some of them are going to go to prison because they have committed crimes. They have violated laws. And some departments are going to be eliminated because they're not efficient and effective. And when you have millions and millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars that are unaccounted for, you got a problem. And you can't say, oh, well, it's just misappropriation of funds. Oh, well, it's an accounting error. Okay, great. You're fired. Because that's a fireable offense now. We're not going to put up with accounting errors. We're not going to put up with misappropriation of funds anymore. And we're not going to take those excuses anymore. That's what this election was about. That and a number of other things. So the number one thing is, we're tired of corrupt government, and we're going to root it out. We're going to wipe the corruptness out of it. The second thing is, we're tired of you lying to us. We're tired of deception. We're tired of being gaslighted. We're tired of being told one thing when it's actually the opposite thing. We're tired of you projecting your sins onto us. And number three, we're tired of being pushed around by the federal government, being a target. Okay? We're tired of it, and we're not putting up with it anymore. And that's the point made by General Flynn. The corruption, the lying, and the deception, right? We want honest government. We want government that's not going to be corrupt but abides by the law. We want government that's not going to be targeting the American people anymore. We're tired of being targeted. We're tired of being targeted. And that's what the agenda, that's what the election was about. So let's hear a little bit more from General Flynn.
The next big phase, though, and this is where I'll kind of end it with you guys and your great audience today, Alex, is execution, right? Execution. So we got up on the beaches of Normandy. We've broken through the hedgerows. We've got the enemy a little bit on their heels. They are going to reform. They're going to try to do some fancy things to us. In this war.
We're about to have the Battle of the Bulge.
Big time.
So we're tired of being messed with, right? Leave us alone. That was the message. Number 3 was leave us alone. But it's not going to happen, is it? We're tired of the corruption. We're tired of lying, deception, and we want to be left alone by the federal government. We don't want to be targeted anymore. Now, Battle of the Bulge, World War II. We thought we'd won the war. We thought we were in charge. We thought we were going to just march into Germany and take Hitler down. but we underestimated the ability of the German army to bring in one last effort to stop the advance of the Allied forces. And that was the Battle of the Bulge. And it was the most horrific battle, or one of the most horrific battles of World War II. 101st Airborne was completely surrounded by the Germans. Patton had to bring, I think it was the 5th Army in, his tanks in, and come in and back up the 101st Airborne and push the Germans back. It was a horrific battle. Well, we're kind of in that now with this transition period. Firing missiles into Russia, metaphorically speaking, is a part of the Battle of the Bulge. It's the attempt to bring the world into disarray, to make things as chaotic and crazy as possible for the incoming Trump administration. Inside the deep state, the original idea was to use the entrenched bureaucrats to disobey, basically, the executive orders from President Trump, and basically just ignore what he's saying and go and do their own thing and push their own agenda regardless of what the president wants. Well, that's what they pulled off in 2016. That's not going to happen in 2024. Trump understands now what they did in 2016 to 2020. This time, they're going to lose their jobs. They'll be fired, and if they break the law, they'll be prosecuted. So why are law enforcement personnel, federal law enforcement personnel, intelligence agents, and so forth, and other people in the bureaucracy scattling out of town, running for the hills? It's because they know this. And they know they've been on the wrong side of the American people. They've been on the wrong side of the law. And so they're running scared. They're running scared. We are going to win this, folks, but we've got to stay focused, and we're going to have to continue on. Look, what you need to do is stay focused on your family, take care of your family, stay focused on your community, stay focused on your job, and don't let any of this bring in irrational fear and distract you and disturb you. I believe we'll get through this time. I think Putin's not going to put up with a whole lot of missiles being dropped. You know, somebody mentioned mushroom clouds in Russia. Not nuclear. I think we would know if there was a nuclear weapon dropped in Russia, but maybe just a plume of the missiles exploding is what they were referring to. Things get exaggerated on social media. Oh, really? Yeah, I think we all know that. So we have to be careful with that. But he's not going to put up with a whole lot of it. He has to defend his own country. And people still think that, people in my generation at least, maybe still think that it's the USSR and we're in the Cold War. It's not the USSR anymore, and we're not in the Cold War. And one of the best things we could do is turn Russia into a friendly trading partner and get along with that nation and respect their sovereign borders as we would like for them to respect our sovereign borders. It's a mutual respect and agreement. Wow, what a concept. I guess the globalist warmongers never thought of that one. They didn't care to, because they make too much money on murder and destruction, or war and destruction. Well, this also, out of a different Alex on X, Ron Barron, quote, Elon Musk understands where spending is much greater than it should be and how that can be corrected. Get rid of cost plus contracts. So this is actually on MSNBC. Listen to what he has to say.
One element that is going to be important for Elon is that he will be able to, he understands where it is unusual spending is much greater than it should be, and how that can be corrected. Pretty easy, actually. You have a lot of cost plus contracts, so they can be changed.
If you didn't hear that, he said you have a lot of cost plus contracts, and that's where Elon Musk will be able to make major changes and save a lot of money for the federal government.
To the way contracts work for SpaceX, where they take the risk instead of the government. Okay, so if you have a cost plus contract, what that is that you agree to do services for the government, they give you a price, and then you go out there and find a lot of subcontractors to do this work for you. The subcontractors, the longer they take and the more they cost, the better it is for you, because you're getting 12% off the top as pure profit. Just as a prime contractor, you want things to cost more.
So your point is that
get rid of cost plus contracts.
The efficiency that he puts in his business, as you think he's going to put into Washington.
Yes, and get rid of cost plus contracts.
So in other words, get rid of this middleman, where the middleman goes in and negotiates with the government a contract, and then instead of doing the work themselves, they hire subcontractors to do the work. They slow mo the work. In other words, they take their sweet time getting the work done because they get, he said, 12% interest or whatever interest it might be in the contract. The longer it takes to get the work done, the more money they make. And so they take their sweet time. And they're charging the government as this is going on. So it costs the government. This is why it costs more for the government to get work done than it does in the private sector. The private sector would never put up with that. The private sector says, you're doing the work. You're not subcontracting. You're doing the work, right? Or maybe if they do subcontract, they're saying, this is the amount we're going to pay, and this is the cutoff date when we expect it to be done. And we're not paying you past the cutoff date. Get it done, right? And if there is past the cutoff date, there are going to be penalties for that. In other words, we're going to reduce the amount we pay you, or there's going to be some incentive in there for them not to go beyond the completion date on the project. But does the government do that? No, the government is just open-ended. And you just go and make a lot of money. Why do you think when contractors are hired to repair a piece of road, to repair a bridge, to lay sewer line, it takes so doggone long for them to get the job done? Well, it's the money. There's an incentive not to get it done quickly. So Elon Musk going into, I can't remember what it's called, the new agency that's going to be created to be a watchdog on government spending. He knows how to get this stuff done because he does these contracts all the time in SpaceX and Tesla and so on. So he understands how to work this, and he's going to bring efficiency into the government. And if they want to play ball, no problem. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. By the way, along that same line, you say, well, how are the cabinet members going to, the people nominated for cabinet members going to be confirmed by the Senate? Like Gates, right? Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. Well, if I was Trump, and I think this is what he's thinking, it'd be simple. We're we want you to confirm Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. But if you decide not to confirm him, I have another position for him. And he will be in a executive think tank or watch group that's going to keep an eye on Congress. And he's going to report to me any insider trading, any of the stuff that you guys are doing that's not above board. I'll know about it. And I'll make sure that whoever does become Attorney General knows about it, or I'll take some kind of action to make sure we take care of that problem. Gaetz is, he'll be watching you guys. Or you can make him Attorney General. It's up to you. You give them that kind of alternative. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to confirm it. And I guarantee you that's how Trump will play the ball. Because he's a businessman. He's not just any businessman. He's a very successful businessman. He had to deal with unions. He had to deal with the New York mob scene. I mean, they were the Teamsters and so forth who, unions involved in organized crime and all that kind of stuff. He had to deal with all that stuff. He had to deal with the city of New York government, and so he understands how to put all this together. Now, it's interesting, speaking of Matt Gaetz, he took a visit and he went down to, El Salvador. Why? Well, he went down to El Salvador for a couple months ago, and he's studying how they went from one of the deadliest countries in the world to one of the safest in a record time. And El Salvador, they rounded up and arrested thousands of very deadly gang members. And they built these super prisons. And the way they run these prisons, these gang members don't have a chance to create any problems at all. They're at a total disadvantage. And so Gaetz was studying how do they do this? How does this work? Why do you suppose he's doing that? Tren de Agua? MS-13? People sneaking across the border who are insurgents? Enemies of the state? Yeah. So. Here's one of Gavin Newsom walking. He's walking, I think it's in San Francisco, and walking past a bunch of homeless people, tent cities, and so forth, with a $8 latte in his hand and $1,200 shoes. But that doesn't give you a picture. Just shows you where California is with its corrupt government. Number of officers are still losing their lives or being injured. Officers are being targeted, law enforcement officers. And unfortunately, it's usually the good ones that get targeted. So, according to Illumina Bot, NBC News reported Hillary Clinton's State Department covered up elite pedophile rings. Jen Psaki helped Hillary Clinton's State Department cover up elite pedophile and human trafficking rings, as reported by NBC themselves. Wow. Let's listen in.
Some serious allegations this morning facing the State Department.
That's right. According to internal State Department memos, the agency might have called off or intervened in investigation into possibly illegal and inappropriate behavior within its ranks, allegedly to protect jobs and avoid scandals. This concerns the time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. We want to get right to NBC's chief White House correspondent, Chuck Todd, with the latest. Chuck, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah. You know, there's an old saying in Washington that the cover-up is worse than the crime. But in this case, both parts of it are disturbing. Allegations of prostitution and pedophilia, and allegations that those crimes were somehow covered up or not looked into. So the State Department this morning is having to respond to those claims and those investigations of misconduct by State Department officials, including by an ambassador and security agents attached to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And the allegations are that these investigations were whitewashed, quashed altogether, and that those orders came from high up.
So Trump wins the election, and all of a sudden, NBC News is turning turncoat on Hillary? Yeah. Be prepared for a whole lot more of that, folks. They're losing the battle. They're losing their former allies who were protecting them before. And the protection's gone. And the corruption's being exposed. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Wisconsin Senate race. Claim of it being stolen. Issues with count. Let's see. Move up to the good stuff here. But that was something that's important. By the way, in Pennsylvania, they got squashed on trying to cheat in that election by their Supreme Court. Their Supreme Court said you can't count those ballots that you want to count to win the election. Done. And there was a lady on the election board that said, well, I'm not going to listen to them. Who obeys the law anymore? And everybody went, whoop, and backed off of her. She looks around and there's nobody there to back her up. And then she came back later and said, oh, well, I was misunderstood. Yeah. You found out that you weren't going to get the support you thought. All right. So Roger Stone puts this out on X. People like Adam Schiff are about to learn that no one, not even you, Senator, is above the law. You broke the law in your Russian collusion hoax. They feared that as AG, or Attorney General, Matt Gaetz will come after Brennan, Comey, and Schiff, who broke the law. No statute of limitations on treason. Let's listen in.
The Republicans in the Senate, they've got to back Trump's nominees here. I mean, this is a mandate, Roger, and I don't know about you, but I'm just sick and tired of these rhinos stabbing our president in the back.
Yeah, the double standard is over. I mean, Matt Gaetz, that piece from the Federalist was absolutely right. He was subjected to character assassination, but there are no facts because he did nothing wrong. This was an effort to silence him because he was an unrelenting critic of the two-tiered justice system. These people knew that the Steele dossier was a fraud. They knew that the Russians never hacked the DNC. I'm sorry, there is no evidence or proof of that. That they used it to cook up an illegitimate effort to remove a duly elected president. It was the greatest single dirty trick in American history, one in which the full authority of the U.S. government and the extraordinary capability of our intelligence agencies were used, utilizing fabricated evidence to try to remove a sitting, duly elected president. Matt Gaetz called them out on that, and that's why they sought to destroy him. Right now, people like Adam Schiff are about to learn that no one, not even you, Senator, are above the law. You broke the law and the House rules in your Russian collusion hoax. And now what they fear is that as Attorney General, Matt Gaetz is going to come after those like John Brennan and James Comey and Adam Schiff who broke the law. There is no statute of limitations on treason. Now, it disappointed me, Todd, that John Durham slowly took 5 years for his report. That was to make sure that Hillary Clinton and Jake Sullivan didn't get prosecuted. They should have been. They broke the law. But there is no statute of limitations on treason. So I hope that if Matt Gaetz becomes the Attorney General, and I'm hopeful that he will do the right thing.
The Republic.
So they're being exposed and they're being caught. You know, the biblical concept is Haman hung on the gallows, that he built for Mordecai. And if you know the story, it's out of the book of Esther. And Haman was the person in power. Mordecai was a Jew that was faithful to God and would not bow to Mordecai, because that would be a violation of his faith to do so. And Mordecai sought to go after, Haman sought to go after Mordecai, who would not bow to Haman. Well, long story short, you have to read the book of Esther in the Bible, but Haman built gallows to hang Mordecai on, but Mordecai had saved the king's life by warning the king before that of an assassination attempt on his life. And when the king found out that Haman was going to go after the Jews, and Esther was a queen in the land, and she was a Jew, and her uncle, I think it was her uncle, Mordecai, was a Jew that saved the king's life, that Haman was going to go after Mordecai, the king turned against Haman, and Haman hung on the gallows that he built to hang Mordecai on. It's an event in history recorded in the Bible, but it demonstrates one of the ways that God works. God will lay traps. God will set up sting operations and get you. That's what happened to Haman. The same thing happened to the wise men that falsely accused Daniel. They were thrown into the lion's den that they intended for Daniel to be tore up in. These people don't understand that when God goes to protect his people, because he still has work for his people to do on this earth, and you're attacking his people, and you're not repentant, and you're not going to be repentant, God will deal with you. And he'll lay a trap. And Psalms chapter 2 says that he would laugh at you when your derision comes. Well, the trap has been laid, and these people who are corrupt in our government, they're facing a Haman situation. Based upon information, this is out of X again, based upon the information provided to the Second Circuit Court on appeal of the E. Jean Carroll case against President Trump, the verdict should be overturned. The president's attorneys were not allowed to cross-examine the so-called victim in the trial, that was never a police there was never a police report corroborating witnesses or DNA evidence presented to the jury. It's obvious the judge was and then they have a clown face. Soon, the weaponization of our legal system will never occur again. Let's take a listen in on this.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Will Scharf. I'm one of President Trump's attorneys. Today, we presented oral argument before the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit in one of two cases brought against President Trump by E. Jean Carroll. Now, it's really important to remember that E. Jean Carroll's story at its heart is an utterly implausible he said, she said story. There is no corroboration for anything she has ever claimed about President Trump. There are no corroborating witnesses, as President Trump alluded to. There is not confirmatory DNA. No police report was filed at the time of this alleged incident. She was unable to identify when this incident occurred until quite recently. No surveillance evidence or witnesses have ever been found or come forward confirming any aspect of E. Jean Carroll's story. In light of that, in light of the utter implausibility of the story that E. Jean Carroll was attempting to sell to the jury in this case, her attorneys introduced evidence that should have never seen the inside of a courtroom. Utterly insane efforts to introduce propensity witnesses, Jessica Leeds and Natasha Stoynoff, most notably, in an unfair and improper effort to buttress E. Jean Carroll's failed attempt to assault President Trump. Jessica Leeds' story is instructive here. This is a woman who claims that in the middle of a crowded airliner in 1979, President Trump assaulted her. Leeds has never been able to identify where this plane departed from, where it went to, the date of the flight in question, making our efforts to disprove her testimony extremely difficult. Under the federal rules of evidence, this story should have never been allowed to be presented to the jury in this case. The same is true of Natasha Stoynoff's story, which again lacks any indicia of reliability, any sort of credibility, any sort of confirmatory testimony from other witnesses, or anything else that would make you believe that this actually happened. So on the one hand, you have a judge who allowed in this improper propensity evidence that should not have been allowed in. In our view, that polluted the jury's deliberations in this case. That presented a story to the jury of a series of a pattern of conduct that the jury should not have been considering. And we think that absent that propensity evidence, no fair jury could have reached the verdict that was reached in this case. And as a result, we believe that this verdict needs to be overturned. But
It reminds me of the Soviet show trials. This is lawfare, what they call lawfare. It's weaponizing the courts against a political candidate that didn't do anything wrong, apparently. It's weaponizing the courts against your political opponent. Trump was right all along about this.
There's more than that. In addition to this improper propensity evidence, President Trump and his trial team were prevented from cross-examining E. Jean Carroll and other witnesses on crucial issues.
In other words, the prosecution could present their case, but the defense could not present their case. That's not how our system of jurisprudence works. It's a violation of the Fifth Amendment to face your accusers in court and to have the opportunity to present a defense. The court violated the Fifth Amendment.
Issues in particular relating to political coordination and the political motivation behind this entire lawsuit. This is a lawsuit that was instigated in large part by George Conway, a longtime political foe and adversary of President Trump. This is a lawsuit that was funded by Reid Hoffman, a key political ally of the Biden-Harris administration and a major Democrat donor. We were limited in the evidence we were allowed to present at trial about these crucial facts. We were prevented from cross-examining E. Jean Carroll on aspects of that dynamic that underlies this entire lawsuit. And that, too, unfairly corrupted the jury's deliberations in this case and requires reversal of the jury verdict. I think this political coordination point is particularly important, though. It's important to emphasize because what we have seen in the last few years is a weaponization by the Biden administration and by their political allies of our legal system and of our courts to unlawfully, unconstitutionally interfere with President Trump's core First Amendment right to run for president. That is.
And if they can do it to Trump, they can do it to you, and they can do it to me. And they have to many Americans. There's a number of Americans that have been unjustly targeted by the justice system, by the DOJ, and unjustly prosecuted.
A right guaranteed to him by the Constitution. That is the right that his political opponents are attempting to strip away from him. We have seen this in case after case after case where unfair political motives have underlay what should be serious legal proceedings. And I think when you look at this situation in toto, when you look at what the left, when you look at what the Biden-Harris administration is attempting to do to President Trump, this is insane. This is an absolute abuse of our legal system. It's an absolute abuse of the rule of law. It should be deeply offensive, not just to political supporters of President Trump, but to each and every American. With respect to today's appeal, we are hopeful that the Second Circuit understands what's at stake here. We are hopeful that the Second Circuit understands what occurred during this trial, which was an improper use of evidence to buttress E. Jean Carroll's entirely meritless claims on the one hand, and an improper exclusion of evidence that would have informed the jury about the true motivation behind this lawsuit, and that we believe would have resulted in a very different verdict. Thank you.
Yeah, he said it. I don't have any more to add to that. I think it's clear that the corruption extends to certain members of the judicial branch as well. All right. Now, on to another subject. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, I can't say his word, Hegseth. He says, you cannot argue with this logic. This is, who is this? Insurrection Barbie, okay. You cannot argue with this logic. He's 100% correct. He's going to be perfect as Secretary of Defense, and that is why they hate this pick so much. Now remember that the Department of Defense brought critical race theory, it brought intersectionality and wokeness into the military, and requiring certain things that are destructive to unit cohesiveness and readiness. And so this is our future Defense Secretary, hopefully, if he gets confirmed. Listen in to what he has to say about this.
If you had a Cat 4 dental, they pulled your tooth because you can't be out in the field with a major, dental emergency where there's no dentist. And so I deployed with a lot of guys who were like, because they just had a tooth pulled and they had to. Yet we're now allowing people who used to be men or women join. And then after that, we pay for medical or physical transitions to another gender, which by definition makes them non-deployable and non-trainable because they're, and the same thing with asthma medication or inhalers. Like when you're in basic training, you can't have an inhaler when you're doing your exercises because you can't count on having an inhaler in a combat situation. Well, if you're medically dependent on drugs to maintain your gender or a particular balance of chemicals inside your body, you're by definition non-deployable. And so they'd have soldiers who can't train, can't deploy, have been on the books, and yet everyone has to be careful about what pronoun you use with them.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with how effective a unit's going to be. And yet so something like that should be banned on day one in a Trump administration. We're not doing the treaty, and he did that. It got immediately reversed under Biden. Things like that, because it's a top-down. I'm not saying top-down is the only way that works. I know that. I know that you top-down things and people can ignore it and they can maneuver it and they can work around it. I just think there's enough of a core inside the DoD that if you push top-down and then you change the way you do basic training and the way you do recruiting and the way you do the military academies, you have a fighting chance to restore an ethos. Now, that doesn't say anything about how the politicians will use that military in the future, which they have a horrible track record of, but institutionally, you at least have a chance. Maybe. I mean, I think that one of the amazing parts is the lies that our senior leaders were willing to tell us, even though they knew they were not true. Like suddenly this idea that Mark Milley just discovered that the whole institution was systemically racist, that all these bases needed to be changed, like, you know, Fort Bragg can't be Fort Bragg. I mean, if I'm correct, I think he was the commander, of Fort Hood, I think. You know, why didn't he speak up when he was at Fort Hood? How could you possibly command at a base named after a Confederate and not say something? So
you can see where he's going here. Look, transgenders in the military, like he said, are not deployable. They're not trainable because of the drugs that they have to take to maintain their illusion, okay? There's, in my humble opinion, psychological issues here that need to be addressed, and it has no place in our military. Now, behind me, there are two honorable discharges. There's a third one that I have in a closet over here. I haven't hung it up. One is from the United States Navy, and the other one is from the Army National Guard. So I had some time in the military, and I absolutely agree with what he's saying here. It's damaging to our military, and it needs to be rooted out. And one of the things that he's going to do, he's going to fix that problem, which is should be good news to the folks in the military that want to do their job and not be hindered with all of this woke nonsense that's being pushed by these marginal generals and admirals.
You complicit, but now suddenly after George Floyd, to your point, after defund the police, it became faddish to insinuate that the military ranks are infected with racists. That it's all these white nationalists under the radar with tattoos just waiting to pop up, and ultimately on the recruiting side, what you've done is you Bud Lighted yourself. You basically, we'll get to that in a second.
I had a lot of years in the military, folks. 7 years active duty, 6 years either Army National Guard or Naval Reserve. So total, between all of my active duty and reserve time, we're looking at 13 years in the military. The military is not racist, okay? Not even close. There are no under the radar white supremacists or white nationalists racist in the military. I'm telling you right now, it does not exist. I know I spent a lot of time most of my time in the Navy, but some time in the Army, two different branches of military. When I was in, I had a connection with all four branches. I was stationed at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi for about 3 months while I was going to school. So I had I was able to observe how the Air Force did things. I was amphibious assault on 2 deployments, working with the Marine Corps. There are 2 Navy ratings that go with Marine Fleet Force, okay? And one has to go through medic combat school, and the other one has to go through Marine Corps infantry training. it's the Navy corpsman and the Navy RP. And Navy RP protects a chaplain in a combat zone. It's a combative rating in the Navy. It has to go through Marine Corps combative training. And I was an RP. And I worked amphibious assault for 4 years in the Navy. And made 2 deployments. And worked with Marines. And so there's my connection with Navy, Army, Marine Corps, and Air Force. And I can tell you right now, none of them were racist. None of them.
But what they knew in the process is it wasn't true. So when the Army and the whole military got around to actually doing the studies of, extremism in the ranks, the number of extremists or racists writ large in our country is there's 7% or whatever. Maybe I'm wrong. Inside the military is 0.07%. So the military has done a better job writ large than other institutions of keeping racism out of its ranks. I don't know about you, but I didn't tolerate racism when I was a commander. It wasn't if it ever happened, it was addressed. And for the most part, it didn't happen because we were all in on the same mission, regardless of. And everybody knew that. Milley should have known that. He knew that. But he knew what the political leaders wanted to hear.
Why? Because we all depended on each other for our lives. When I was in law enforcement, I worked with all different races. I worked with different genders. And I worked with veterans of different branches of service. We did not make an issue out of any of that, race, gender, or otherwise, because we depended on each other for our lives. And that forges very tight relationships, and you will work hard to protect that other person, regardless of who they are.
That, there were some vets on Capitol Hill on January 6th. They must be extremists. We must have a racism problem. Let's do it.
The left always wants to vilify the vets. They always want to do that.
A 60-day stand down for extremism. And let's bring in Bishop Garrison, a noted, white-hating, Trump-hating DEI advocate, to lead it. And as if he'll be the one that identifies who's racist and who isn't racist. So they introduced more racism in the name of ending racism, which is the definition of anti-racism, which is a totally racist approach meant to divide us against ourselves. Yet anyone who is in the military knows that's not the problem we have.
Yeah.
Officer, I think it was a lieutenant colonel, Army, decorated combat veteran, graduate of 2 Ivy League universities. And they say, he was just a commentator on Fox News. Don't let anybody gaslight you, lie to you, folks. Now, this is Tulsi Gabbard, and I'm going to close it up soon because we've been going a while. She's saying, shut down the biolabs that are causing the pandemics. This is a minute and 31 seconds, or minute 39 seconds long. Minute 51. Let's hear what she has to say.
Here are the undeniable facts. There are 25 to 30 U.S.-funded biolabs in Ukraine. According to the U.S. government, these biolabs are conducting research on dangerous pathogens. Ukraine is in an active war zone with widespread bombing, artillery, and shelling, and these facilities, even in the best of circumstances, could easily be compromised and release these deadly pathogens. Now, like COVID, these pathogens know no borders. If they are inadvertently or purposely breached or compromised, they will quickly spread all throughout Europe, the United States, and the rest of the world, causing untold suffering and death.
Wouldn't the globalist, oligarch, death-worshipping elites love that?
So in order to protect the American people, the people of Europe, the people around the world, these labs need to be shut down immediately, and the pathogens that they hold need to be destroyed. Instead of trying to cover this up, the Biden-Harris administration needs to work with Russia, Ukraine, NATO, the UN to immediately implement a ceasefire for all military action in the vicinity of these labs until they're secured and these pathogens are destroyed.
But that wouldn't go along with the plan that they had. I have 2 books here in my library, my office, whatever you want to call it, by Klaus Schwab, The Great Reset, and another book that he wrote. I have other books by other globalists, and I've studied it. I've read these books. I've tried to get inside their head, get inside their mind, and understand them. And let me tell you something. That's exactly what they want. They want to hit those labs and cause those diseases to spread. They say so in their writings. It's part of the 2030 agenda. Get their materials and read it. Read what they're saying. If you've got time to sit down and go through it, it'll shock you how evil, satanic, and sinister these people are.
In addition to all this, the U.S. funds around 300 biolabs around the world who are engaging in dangerous research, including gain of function, similar to the lab in Wuhan where COVID-19 may have originated from.
Why? Why is the U.S. funding of 300 biolabs around the world? For what purpose? And what purpose of gain of function research? Why would we do that?
Now, after realizing how dangerous and vulnerable these labs are, they should have all been shut down 2 years ago, but they haven't. Now, this is not a partisan political issue. The administration and Congress need to act now for the health and well-being of every American and every person on this planet.
Yeah, they do. They won't unless they're pressured to do so. Well, how are they pressured to do so? Well, if they're facing the possibility of being held accountable for their actions in a manner that scares the living daylights out of them, that puts the fear of God into them, then maybe they'll act. Guess what's happening right now? The fear of God is being put into them. Why? Well, because of the cabinet picks that Trump has and what these cabinet picks are planning to do to go after these people who are illegally and unnecessarily endangering the rest of us. All right. But things are looking up, folks, because soon the adults will be back in town. And the adults are going to take care of business. By back in town, I mean back in Washington, D.C. All right. Asheville, North Carolina. Women's children are being taken only because they lost their home from the flood. But the problem is they can't get housing. They'd like to build some temporary housing, but they can't get the permits to build the temporary housing. FEMA's not they have portable housing available. They're not delivering it. Why? Yeah. A big why, right? What is behind that thinking of FEMA? What's their agenda? What's their plan? Well, let's listen in for just a second.
She says, I was just with a woman that they took her 3 children, and one of them's autistic. I said, where are they going to put them? She said, they're going to separate them, put them in foster homes. Yeah. I said, how do you get them back? And there's no answer to that.
Yeah.
But then when they closed down the food pantry for us, so she couldn't get food to people, it's like, what are you doing? You know, and it was,
Yeah,
what
people
she
are
said,
saying that
DHS.
the media is saying that that's not true. That they're not shutting down food.
They didn't
supply
shut it down.
stations,
They
or
took it
they're
over.
Taking them over. They're saying
Yeah.
they're not doing that. Oh, the government's not doing
Well,
it.
this is a lady
And they're
that,
not
that I
taking people's
personally
foods.
know.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is on the media, on national media, they're saying that is untrue. That they're not doing that. The
Well, they're
government's
also
not
saying
doing
there's only 200 people dead.
that. Yeah.
They haven't found
I think
most of them.
the last report I saw was like 230. That was probably 5 weeks ago. They stopped reporting deaths.
Yep.
And I know for a fact more than that have been
They're
found
still-
since I've been here.
They're still finding them along the river.
Oh yeah.
He had met with this woman, and
thousands of body bags, up to tens of thousands. You know, there's over 10,000 body bags have been shipped in there, and they're still needing more. They lie. They gaslight. They should be held accountable for their actions. If you're breaking the law, you should be held accountable. I don't believe in revenge, and I don't believe in retribution, and I don't believe in weaponizing the Justice Department against political enemies or against someone simply because they don't believe what I believe or they say something I don't like. I don't believe in using government to go after people for that. But I do believe that if they're breaking the law, they should be held accountable for that, as long as it's a just law. We need to have just laws. If it's an unjust law, then the courts need to step in and say, yeah, that law needs to be rescinded, or, you know, we need to deal with that situation because that's, you know, that's an unjust use of the law to go after people. Passing that law just to go after people or whatever it might be. But it has to be a just law. But a just law broken, yeah, there needs to be accountability. Definitely. Now, an example of an unjust law, and I'll close with this, is in the Old South, when I was a child growing up in the South, segregation, and saying this category of persons have to sit in the back of the bus, and someone who's tired and they can only find a seat toward the front sits down and they're arrested for it. Okay, arresting a baker because he has a Christian faith that says, I can't do this particular thing. It would be a violation of my Christian faith, but he gets arrested for it. Okay? Unjust laws, unjust actions by government. Let's finish up what he's saying, and then we'll close out.
And that morning, her children had been taken away.
Okay.
And
Let
then
me
that
back
same
it up
day,
again.
she went over finding them along the river.
Oh yeah.
He had met with this woman, and that morning, her children had been taken away.
Okay.
And then that same day, she went over.
And in areas out here, they're finding groups of bodies.
Still finding pieces
But
of
only
trees.
230 from the entire storm across all the states.
This lady that I know in Elizabethton was talking to a fire chief that she knows.
Yeah.
And he says, we're
Anyway, it ended there. There's so much I need to cover, and I can't cover it all. It's just not enough time. But there's a lot of people out there putting out good information. X is an excellent platform to get all this information. And I had some news on January 6ers. I do need to put that out if I can find it real quick. Here's one where a Christian is being told by a police officer in the UK that they're not allowed to sing hymns outside of the church. They have to be inside the church to sing hymns, otherwise they're breaking the law. That's how stupid the UK politicians have gotten. But let me see if I can find the one. There was a decision by the courts Here's Joe Rogan reporting that 200 congressmen took ivermectin to fight off COVID. Jeez, these people know no bounds. Let me find the one on January 6th because I wanted to report on that one, and then we'll close it out. Where is that? Man, I got some stuff on the flu shots. We'll have to do that on the next one. I have to be careful though, because YouTube will shut me down. Let me just say this: I don't trust them. I don't trust the pharmaceutical companies. I don't trust the CDC, and I don't trust the FDA at this point. Because things I'm learning, go to my X account, you'll see it. Yeah, there was a decision that a lot of January 6ers are going to have to be released because the court, there's a particular law that they've been charged that the court shot down. Now I can't find it. Wish I could find that. Thought I had it in here. All right. Once I locate it, I will report that in the next video because I can't seem to locate it right now. All right. Bummer. Taking one more look. Talking about Matt Gaetz, the judiciary. That was a good one too. Republican leaders apparently are calling for Biden's immediate removal under the 25th Amendment in response to his insane bombing of Russia. That's Alex Jones putting that one out. Yes, Senator Steve Daines at a press conference introduced himself. He said, "I am Steve Daines. My pronouns are Republican majority." Then he said this, "I have a simple message for Chuck Schumer and Bob Casey. It's over." That's pretty good. Oh, I wish I could find the one. I got some stuff on CO2 in the atmosphere, a bunch of nonsense being put out, lies put out about that. Their scientists are now getting brave, getting stronger. They know who's coming into the White House, and they're starting to expose the scam, okay? The scam, the lies being put out about CO2. We'll put it that way. Here it is. I think this is it. Oh, let me get in here. It says, oh, here it is. Breaking, Supreme Court rules 6-3, making it harder to charge J6 defendants with obstruction, potentially upending hundreds of cases brought against defendants, including President Trump's. So things are happening, folks. Look, we have brighter days ahead of us. I believe that God has intervened and is saving our nation from the corruption that's threatened to take it down. But let me give a word of warning. Number one, let's not get prideful and haughty about that. Let's stay humble. Because as soon as we get prideful and haughty, God can reverse everything because of our sin of pride. So let's stay humble. But number two, God is the ultimate justice. And nothing can get past him. And if he decides he's going to go in a direction That's it. All right. Stay humble. Don't be prideful. Give God the glory. And stay focused. Stay focused. Because as soon as we relax thinking we've got this, it's over, we're winning, we can take a vacation, that's when they strike. When we're not watching for it. Stay diligent. The Bible says walk circumspectly because the days are evil. So we gained ground. Don't lose any of that ground. I guess that's about it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on C-Files. God bless.